You'll be familiar with the figures. Last week we heard that a record 750,000 people came into the year to last December. So that's 2022, a record number of legal migrants coming into the country. You know about the issue with stopping the boats. The illegal numbers, just to remind you, last year coming into the Channel by boat were 45,000. However, does look as if the Cabinet is at odds with itself over this issue. We've heard over the weekend some interesting rhetoric from the Home Secretary, James Cleverly. He's described the Rwanda scheme in rather unfavourable terms, not a word I can repeat at this time in the evening, but said it was bat something crazy. He's also said in an interview on Sunday that we shouldn't be fixated on the Rwanda deal, that it isn't the be-all and end-all. And that language was repeated by the Prime Minister today. He's at that global summit at the Hampton Court Palace, and he's basically talking about the type of people who should get visas. And this is what he said.
But we don't have a monopoly on talent in this country. And we recognise that nearly half of our most innovative companies have an immigrant founder. So if you're an innovator, an entrepreneur, a researcher, you should know that the most competitive visa regime for highly skilled international talent is right here in the UK. And let me just give you one example. Our new high potential individual visa means that if you're a young person who's graduated from a global top 50 university, you can just come to the UK and stay here with your family for 2 years to just explore, work, study, invent. Nothing like that exists anywhere else in the world.
So that was Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, I think, very much talking in terms of more immigration, particularly among students, even though student visas are increasingly a concern, particularly among right-wing backbenchers who effectively think that this number is too high. And it's too high because a lot of students are bringing in dependents. Now, we've heard again today that Robert Jenrick, who's the Immigration Minister, worked very closely with Braverman, is apparently on resignation watch. That's what's been reported. His people deny that, but he seems to be at odds with Cleverly over the Rwanda deal. He appeared in the House of Commons earlier this afternoon, and this is what he said.
Well, when my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, and I set out our comprehensive plan this time last year, it had many facets, one of which, and an extremely important component of which, was our Rwanda plan. But it was not the only element of our plan. And we have worked intensively over the course of the last 12 months on each and every other facet of that plan. And those on the opposite benches jeer, but is that plan working? Yes, it is.
This is confusing me because I thought the whole impetus behind stopping the boats was to have the Rwanda plan as a deterrent. And then we've had over the weekend James Cleverly saying that it's not the be-all and end-all. And we've now got Robert Jenrick, who was disagreeing with James Cleverly but seemingly has been brought into line, saying that the Rwanda plan isn't central to the government's plan to stop the boats. So I'm confused, you're probably confused. That's why the question tonight is going to be, is it time to abandon the Rwanda plan? I mean, at the end of the day, if the government can't get these flights to take off next year, and it remains to be seen, frankly, whether they can mount this legal challenge, come up with this emergency legislation, it might get through the Commons, will it get through the Lords? Not without a huge amount of opposition. Therefore, is Rwanda just the wrong plan completely? Maybe they should consider processing migrants in another country, a British overseas territory perhaps, but not Rwanda, because the Supreme Court isn't happy with Rwanda as a country. I personally am struggling with this idea that they could introduce emergency legislation to suggest that Rwanda is safe, even though the Supreme Court doesn't think it is. But enough from what I think. I'd like to hear from you. So do get in touch. Email farage@gbnews.com or tweet #Farage on GB News and tell us what you think about the Rwanda plan, because it could be that you like the idea of the deterrent, but clearly this plan, pardon the pun, is not going to be taking off anytime soon. Well, let's have a word now with somebody who does know his onions when it comes to the law of the land, Robert Buckland, Conservative MP for South Swindon. Of course, he previously served as Justice Secretary and Welsh Secretary. Robert, lovely to see you this evening. Clear something up for us then. We have James Cleverly saying that the Rwanda plan isn't the be-all and end-all. We've now got Robert Jenrick saying, oh, don't focus on Rwanda. I mean, you'll forgive us for focusing on Rwanda because that's precisely what the government's been focusing on for months and months and months, promising us that these flights will take off. Is Rwanda not the plan anymore, Robert? Clear it up for us.
Well, I've always said that Rwanda wasn't the be-all and end-all, and I'm very glad to hear the Home Secretary and Robert Jenrick agree with me, because actually when you look at what the government's been doing, the big game changer here, or the dial mover, was the Albania deal that the Prime Minister managed to sort out at the end of last year, which saw a really steep reduction, in fact, an end to these young Albanian men coming over here, on the boat, swinging the lead and really causing problems. That's been solved, and we started to see the numbers come down on these small boats, which is good. So it begs the question, will Rwanda help or hinder? I think there's still legs in it. I still think it's worth pursuing, because the principle of using a third country has been agreed as legal. That's not the problem. The question is whether Rwanda will fit the bill. And it seems to me, unless the government does more, unless Rwanda does more to satisfy everybody that it's a safe country, then we will continue to struggle with the problems that we saw up to and including the Supreme Court judgment.
So can I just confirm, you haven't got a problem necessarily with processing migrants overseas, but you've got a problem, as the Supreme Court does, with Rwanda as a location. I mean, where else could they do it? They could look at, I remember interviewing Richard Tyson here last week, and he was saying, well, we're looking at a British overseas territory. He wouldn't say which one. I'm presuming he means the Falklands, Ascension Island, or somewhere like that. Would that be preferable, Robert?
Well, look, I used to have responsibility as a minister for working with the overseas territories. They're really small, and accessibility and facilities are not great in these places. You need to invest a lot of money on building, accommodation, etc. It seems to me that could be, and look, other European countries are doing this, seeking deals with other countries to process. So Austria's looking at it. Denmark's been looking at it for years. There's nothing sort of special or exceptional about this, but we do need to find places where it could practically work. Now, I'm not saying Rwanda's a dead letter. I mean, I think more work could be done by the Rwandans themselves, and indeed by us through treaty, to really make sure that the system is watertight. But at the end of the day, what we need to do, I think, here, Camilla, is make sure that we differentiate between illegals and legals, and not make this debate all about the confluence of the two. They are two different issues.
Well, let's talk about legal. Let's talk about legal, because that figure of, it's actually 742,000, I believe, that came into the end of December 2022. That's far too high. It totally flies in the face of promises made by consecutive Prime Ministers. David Cameron talked about tens of thousands. Theresa May talked about tens of thousands. The Tory party manifesto in 2019 talks about controlling the borders with an Australian points-based system. We've now got a row, seemingly within the Tory party, between those who think that there should be a 40k cap on people coming in, that they should be earning 40k or above. That's a Boris Johnson suggestion. Apparently that was also in the deal that Suella Braverman allegedly struck with Rishi Sunak. But then you've got One Nationers like Damien Green saying that that threshold's too high and could lead to a staffing shortage in the NHS. But the public can't have much confidence in the Conservative Party solving these issues if they can't even agree between themselves.
Well, first of all, Camilla, the numbers, I think, need to be drilled down. About a tenth of that is going to be people from Ukraine and Hong Kong that we all warmly welcome to our country. A huge proportion is students themselves. Where I agree with concerns is that there are too many dependents coming with the students that we need to sort out, and I agree with that. If you overpitch the salary level, and I think there is a case to increase it because of inflation, and it hasn't been adjusted for a long time. If you price it too high, we will end up with shortages in key job areas like care. And frankly, all that does is just increase wage inflation and create the sort of problem that lead to overall inflationary pressures in the economy. So this is all about getting the balance right, acknowledging the fact still got too many people who are economically inactive here in the UK, but dealing with that problem isn't going to be solved overnight. That's going to take years, and therefore we need to strike the balance between making sure our care sector, our farming sector, people, but not allowing this sort of floodgates
Robert,
to continue.
Quick final question. When it comes to dependents, who should be able to come on the back of a student visa? I mean, we're seeing cases where people are bringing their grandparents over. Grandparents aren't immediate family. It should be for students, perhaps, who have children, or to bring their spouse or their partner over, but nobody else, surely.
I agree with you, bang on, Camilla. I think we need to absolutely tighten that up. There's evidence that some of those numbers have gone haywire in the last couple of years, up from a few thousands up to the 80 or more thousand. I think that would be a quick win for the government. But I do think, at the end of the day, people will accept students coming here because we know that they're going to go back. And it's making sure that the system is enforced so that people have confidence in that, which really, I think, annoys and irritates many of our electorate. And it's getting that enforcement right that the government has to concentrate on in the months and years ahead.
Amen to that, Robert Buckland. Thank you very much for joining me this evening.